Alright, quick video regarding Kanye visiting the Oval Office and the Saturday Night Live response. Kanye did come off like he's a little bit nutty. I think he's always been like that. Honestly, I'm not like a Kanye fan. I don't really like his music that much. I like The Life of Pablo. That's his best album. I didn't really like dark fantasy. I'd never respected the hype around it. I'm just not into it, you know. I'm not really I don't like listening to some guy brag about his clothes and like it's just not my thing, you know. That said, I did really like his development into more of a sort of abstract electronic territory with Yeezus and Mercy and what was it, Niggas in Paris, and especially Life of Pablo I thought was very interesting. It was like vaporwave almost, and it was very 4chan-y, had a very you know, internet culture feeling to it. It really felt like he was speaking to us, you know. And that's sort of why I like Kanye. That's why I'll come to his defense, is because he's on the outside. He's always been both on the inside of the culture while also really doing something unique and interesting, and that's really that's important. And you know, I don't know. I think that when he visited the Oval Office, this was following him meeting with Candace Owens and the sort of new African thinking in America, black thinking. I understand these terms are sort of tainted or something, but you know, I'm trying to break off of the way of like, you have to always worry about the words you use. Like, I don't really care. Black, I'm just going to call it black. Black. Or I'm going to call it African. Because I don't think people should really be obligated to constantly tiptoe and worry around this subject that they're going to say the wrong thing. I think that's actually bad for black people to be in that position. It's sort of a contrarian position that I have, I think, but I do actually believe that if I was going to break down philosophically why my position is better for black people, I could easily prove that. And I think that the fact is that if that's true, that would mean that the left and their policies are actually bad for black people, which would mean that the left and their policies are racist, right? Isn't that the definition of racist? Harming black people or harming minorities? It's obviously, it has nothing to do with harming white people, because you can't be racist against white people. So let's just define it the way the left does and say, if your policies hurt black people, then your policies are racist. And I believe, honestly, I just think that the left's policies about you know, treating black people like sort of like they're beneath white people and they need to constantly be babied, and you know, they're not allowed to think for themselves, they're not allowed to be conservative. The way that the left turns on black people the moment that they, you know, step out of that way of thinking, I do honestly believe there's something racist about that. It's like human beings have something called, in my opinion, something called agency, and consciousness, awareness, and willpower, and they're sort of like, when you're a slave, your agency is undermined. Your sense of individuality is restricted, emotionally or psychologically or physically, by barriers to your movement, barriers to what you're allowed to say and think, or coercion and attempts to keep you in line. So I really do think that this Saturday Night Live skit, it resembles something out of communist China or North Korea, just in the way that it is indicative of a sort of attempt to shame a human being into being in a submissive posture, because Kanye is essentially somebody who has left a cult. If you view SNL and the left as sort of like Scientology as a cult, which is, you know, then you can see that this skit is sort of like the cult trying to, you know, maintain its sense of cohesion. It's really scary, man. Like, it's not funny. Honestly, it's disturbing to me, personally. And I do think that we're in very unusual times. This is a hard time to live through. I don't think there's anything easy about any of this. I don't think, you know, I never really wanted to think about this that much, but it's fairly obvious that, you know, it is an important issue, and it's going to be a central aspect of things politically for a long time, so it is important to understand it. I do think what Kanye is doing is revolutionary, and it's in line with most of his musical and artistic progress through time. I think he's a brilliant person. I've never really been a fan of his music, like I've said already, that much. I remember when Pitchfork gave his album a 10, it was sort of like a shift in the culture, and I think it was a negative shift, personally. It really agitated me, it bothered me. I did not feel that it was that great, but again, it's a genre thing. I'm just not really into that. I'm more into other forms of music. But you know, I will acknowledge that he is a real original, and I do think that there's something in art. Great artists are people who break the mold, and they speak their soul, and they change things. They push, in a certain sense. And that's why Kanye, I think, is great, despite that I don't really love all of his works due to genre reasons mostly. I do think that what Kanye is doing is artistic here. You don't have to believe in Trump. I don't think Kanye likes Trump. That's the feeling I actually got. Is, Ye just because Ye's wearing a MAGA hat and doing his art doesn't mean that he fully agrees with conservative ideas. But I do think what he's saying is valid. I think that what he's saying about Black America, and which I don't care about personally. I just don't really care about other people other than myself. However, I just think objectively, as an objective fact, I do think that leftist democratic policies and culture is harmful in the medium to long term, especially in immediate term, for Black America. I think ultimately that harms everybody. It makes the country a worse place because their way of treating Black people and taking their agency away from them by expecting them to behave a certain way and think a certain way, and keep them ideologically in line with harmful ideological ideas that ultimately create a sense of endless victimhood, a sense of powerlessness, and anger. A lot of anger that is not channeled in a way that is constructive for Black communities. It actually makes them shittier. I think that is something that Kanye is pushing forward. He's taking it to the next level. I didn't really understand everything he was talking about. He kind of did. The reason the SNL skit's kind of triggering for me is because it's not exactly completely untrue. Kanye does come off kind of nuts, but that was never really a big problem for SNL and Pitchfork, etc. until he started saying the wrong things, and it reveals the mentality that these leftists, SNL, Pitchfork people have. It reveals that they only like Black people as long as Black people submit to their ideological position. To me that is racist, because it's hard to articulate why I feel that this is racist. It seems to me that the left doesn't want Black people to exist unless they are willing to submit to the leftist plan, essentially, the leftist ideological system. And to me, that suggests that the left does not respect Black people on a metaphysical and existential level. They don't respect the agency on a basic level, a basic human level of Black Americans. They don't believe in or respect African American agency. And so in another sense, they ultimately do view generally Black people as their pets or as their slaves, in a sense. I honestly, I do believe that. I think that it's a subtle, very subtle thing, but that overall it actually is real, and I do think that ultimately it is if you want to be talking about progress, tolerance, ending bigotry, I think that it's a form of bigotry. I don't care about bigotry. I don't know how to say that enough times. I'm not really like a leftist. I think that bigotry is pretty common, actually. I think that it's like almost like a nature thing where, like, you could say that different animals are bigoted against each other, or that different, you know, uh, plants are bigoted against each other because they take each other's territory, or, you could say that different companies are bigoted against each other because they fight each other for resources. Like, bigotry to me is, I don't know. I just think it's an overblown concept for the most part. I think that bigotry is just one form among many of, divisiveness in human and existence. It's not special. There's nothing worse to me, about what the Nazis did to other races than what Stalin, did to other ideologies. To me, it's all just division, and I don't place any extra moral force on racism or whatever. That's just what I believe. So the word bigotry is a buzzword, in my opinion, that the left uses these days to acquire more control and wealth for themselves. It's a power play, a Linsky power play. Yeah, so I understand it's unusual. Like, to me, a lot of this stuff is sort of it's subtle, I would say. It's not something that's easy to understand at first look. So you could forgive SNL for being a little bit confused about it, I guess. Maybe I overreacted. But I do think there's something to it, and I do believe that race relations in America, or just like the subject of race, excuse me, I don't know. I think it's a complicated subject. I don't have all the answers. I do think, though, that what Kanye is doing is revolutionary, and it is progressive, and it is interesting. And I think that SNL is just they've lost the plot. I think it's really easy just to say Kanye is crazy, but you're not really saying anything when you say that, because you weren't saying it before. You're only saying it now. You're not actually thinking about the issues, and you're not actually addressing what he's saying. So ultimately, you might win these short little, you might look good in the moment, but in the long run, it's going to bite you in the fucking ass, and it's going to be beautiful to watch. It's going to be beautiful. Like it or not, this is the future. So, if you're a leftist, you'd think you'd want black people to be more free and to have more agency and more metaphysical equal footing with everyone else, instead of keeping them in this slot in your mind where they have to be your little victims, that you take care of. I don't want that. I want black people to be true equals, truly raised up to a higher level than just pity party. I don't know why I want that. I think it's just because I don't consider myself an ethical, bleeding heart leftist. I don't go around pretending to care about black people and racism, and I'm not one of those people who needs everyone to think that I'm some kind of virtuous, loving, tolerant guy. I don't care, really. To me, it's just, I am very much a believer in truth, so it's just the truth. It's a fact of reality. This will make black people in America better off if we follow Kanye here. It will make America better off. It will make the world a better place if we leave behind leftist ideas. And furthermore, as with regards to black America, and furthermore, ultimately, the fact that that is the case means that what is happening here, if we take that as the case, it suggests that what we're witnessing with what Kanye and Candace Owens have done with the Trump White House is as much a cultural revolutionary act as what Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks did in the past. And if we accept that as a matter of fact, then despite the fact that appearances are deceiving, it appears to be just some goofy thing, and I often feel that way as well, and SNL wants you to think that too. They don't want you to see it as a special moment. They just can't let that happen, and, so be it. I think that, I don't know. That's really all I had to say, I guess. See ya.